And welcome to episode 5 of Devil Dash. We are coming up on some Pac-12 football. Could be having some football even earlier than the spring. We're going to be getting into that early in the show. We're going to be talking about some alumni around the NFL as week 2 just finished or is finishing up with Monday Night Football. And then we're going to be talking over to our friends at Trojan Dash and looking back at that wide receiver U and see how they're doing around in the NFL. But, Josh, Pac-12 has been the last conference, going to be the last ones to play to start their season, but a vote's coming this week. What do you think?
Hey, it's about time they pulled their heads out of the dirt and did something. They're lagging so hard. It's finally doing something, moving forward, handling COVID situation and trying to plan football, keep these players safe. Supposedly the vote is going down on Thursday, the 24th. Expect that sometime mid-afternoon. Something will come out on Twitter, I'm sure. Be looking at Dash Sports. We're going to be retweeting it. We got you on all the info. But, yeah, I'm excited. I don't know what's going to happen, but hopefully good things.
It's every day that passes the Pac-12, why are we voting on Thursday? This news came out last week. Why wasn't there a vote today? Why wasn't there a vote tomorrow? Why not Wednesday? Every day that passes is bad for the Pac-12 because, the season's already going on. I don't know if you've watched, but, on Saturday there's ESPN games. The SEC starts this week. People are having football starting. The Pac-12 hasn't even their players aren't even on campus yet. They don't have practices. They haven't had 11-on-11 scrimmage, let alone 7-on-7. We just had a bunch of bickering with, pointing fingers with the California and Oregon governors saying, it's not our fault you guys aren't practicing. Go ahead. And, that kind of started the whole, return to play, the whole return to play conversation with the Pac-12. But if this vote does say, let's say they vote to play on Thursday, the whole testing process is the reason they're returning to play is because they can have the contact testing. If you test positive, you can tell exactly who you've been in contact with. But the thing is, many of these coaches have expressed they want 6 weeks. I think it was November 7th start date that would put us at. If you play a 7-game schedule, is that enough? Is that enough to get you in a conversation for a college football playoff? Because if there's an 8-1 Big Ten team, let's say a Penn State or an Ohio State is 8-1, who are you going to give a college football playoff bid to? The 8-1 Ohio State team or a 7-0 Oregon? I really think the Pac-12 really dug themselves a big hole by delaying this decision so late because they're so far behind schedule that they might single-handedly just take themselves out of this playoffs instead of the play doing itself on the field.
Let us know in the chat what you guys think. Do you guys think that the Pac-12 is smart for sticking behind, looking at these other conferences, piggybacking off their decisions, or do you think they're being dumb for, sticking in the shadows? And you could say they're disorganized. I've seen this whole situation just goes to show. I've been seeing some stuff on Twitter. People are saying that the Pac-12 is just like the officials, the head coaches, the athletic directors. For the past 3 months, they've been pretty on point with each other. Everyone's been on the same track, like we're going to handle this our way, do this. And now there's confusion amongst these groups. The head coaches and these athletic directors, they want to get these kids on the field. They look at everyone else playing, this is how they're feeling. So
we got a question from Austin Grad. How many games do you think they'll play? So right now, if they do start November 7th, the start date, November 7th, would allow them to play a 7-game schedule and still be in the running for, all the major bowl games, the New Year's Six Bowls, all those bowl games. The big question is what we were just talking about, though. Does 7 games get you enough national recognition to be, considered one of the 4 best teams to get into the playoff? And to be honest, besides Oregon, there's not really going to be a whole lot of national powerhouses. USC, ASU, Utah, they could be some, maybe bottom top 25 teams, but I really just don't think a 7-0 record would get you in. But the games to be played 7. I think that's the number they're hoping for right now, and I think any less is not even considered a legitimate season at that point. So, the Pac-12 is really, like I said, digging themselves a hole, but you talked about waiting for the decision. We talked about it on other shows. it's tough because they're the little brother to the Big Ten. I think it's very true. We have another question. Do you think we'll be able to attend any games? I don't think so, because we've seen in the NFL they're all private, mostly private companies, and the Cowboys have had fans, the Jaguars have had fans, the Chiefs have had fans, but we're worrying about playing football. Like, it's a huge obstacle to even get these players on the field. I really don't think they're going to take the risk of having fans. I don't know. What do you think? I really don't think.
I think it's possible, Eric. Look, they're letting at ASU right now. They're letting kids go on campus for classes. So if they're letting kids go, I'm not really sure on what situation is for each individual classroom and class size. But if they're letting kids go into class, go into campus, certain things like that. When they let them into the stadium, at least, obviously not full, but I could see some pretty easy measures to be taken here to get some people in the stadium. Dude, we got some diehard fans. Even if they don't let people in, I think we got some Sun Devils that's going to crawl in.
I think another thing to look out for is we just saw week 2 in the NFL happen. It was one of the worst weeks in NFL history regarding injuries. We saw Saquon Barkley, one of the most exciting players in the NFL, tear his ACL. We saw Nick Bosa, one of the best defensive players in the NFL, tear his ACL. We saw Drew Lock, the quarterback for the Broncos. We saw Raheem Mostert. We saw just injuries left and right. And, the big question is, did they have the proper training camp, the proper, all the proper training beforehand to combat these injuries? Or is it, kind of the NFL wants its money, so we're going to throw you guys out on the field? And I think it's something to look out for, because Herm Edwards was talking about the 6 weeks that the Pac-12 needs to ramp up. I think that's what they want to be safe, so their players feel fit to not get injured. He said, I think it's because of the missed opportunity to go out on training camp, and that's showing up in the NFL with all these injuries in the second week. Doesn't surprise me. They're all soft tissue injuries because of all of a sudden these guys have been doing stuff they haven't been doing in game mode, and all of a sudden games are full speed. They're not like that in the preseason when you work your way into it. Yeah. And I think it's something to watch with the Pac-12's vote, because if they do keep delaying this, those 6 weeks could get pushed back. And I think, coaches that really do care about their players, like we've talked about with Herm Edwards, I think it's something to watch about. They could say, we're not safe. We don't feel safe putting our players out there. We got another question. Who's the best player on the team? Like, if I were a college PPR league and needed someone who was going to give me massive points week to week, who would you pick? I think the obvious pick is Jaden Daniels. He's the quarterback of the team. He's without Benjamin, he could even be one of the leading rushers, first if not second. We'll see who steps up at running back. But they've lost their number 1 wide receiver the last 2 years. But Jaden Daniels is going to be a first-round draft pick, so I think that would be your answer for that one. But
it's got to be either Jaden, or I could even go wild card Frank Darby, bro.
He could have a very big year.
Last year, Ayuk, without a doubt. My boy, leading massive people in yards after catch. That's what he does, baby.
Darby, it's another thing to look out for. Like, some of these players that it's going to be hard to tell who's going to be your best player, because we've seen Robbie Anderson in the NFL have a huge year to start. A lot of these players, are just taking advantage of this opportunity of just jumping into play and, maybe staying fit in the offseason. So I think if you're looking for a wild card, you could find someone, that's just been working hard, and someone that's been there, gotten the reps, and, knows the offense, but just taking advantage of a small season, kind of like we've seen in the MLB as well. Got another question. I think the Pac-12 should begin safely. Is it fair to the players and fans? Thoughts? I really think the fans don't have any say in this. Personally, the player safety should be the number one reason for returning to play or not returning to play. I think money should be second. If it's not first already, it should be second. But there's so many obstacles just by the Pac-12 delaying the play in the first place, by delaying it early. At the time, it seemed like a great idea. It was like, all right, no one was really saying you guys are dumb for doing this. It made sense with the mitochondria, whatever the heart issue. Sorry, it's drawing my memory, but
yeah, we're not doctors. So.
Yes, I know doctors on this end on Double Dash, but they made the decision pretty early, and there wasn't enough evidence for other people there wasn't enough evidence for the Pac-12 to say, you know what, hey, we're going to restart what evidence was given to us in that time that the Pac-12 could have said, hey, this is enough to not worry about the myocarditis. Myocarditis, sorry. Thank you, Sam, producer Sam behind the glass. But so that's why the Pac-12 really couldn't jump to action quicker, but they were the ones that I wrote about in an article that's coming out for Sports Pac-12 this week. And the Pac-12 introduced this relationship with Quidel, who offered the contact testing bracelets, and it was this groundbreaking technology. And the Big Ten was the one that started their vote first to jump back into play. And the Pac-12 just didn't do anything. They sat back and waited for the big brother. And that's kind of been the joke. And we got another question about the fans. Sorry, we can jump
let's hold off on this question for a second. Kelly, there is no reason why the Pac-12 should not be playing football right now. I mean, if you actually think about it, the Big Ten, the ACC, and the SEC, everybody's on track now. If you can look at the SEC and the ACC, see what they have done. I don't understand how they're not playing. We have the internet, people. You can find so much information. These athletic directors, they have connections. They can call these other leaders of these schools and what is going wrong in your guys' testing process. They can gather all the negatives from what they've done and fix that right then and there. I mean, that seems like just the most easy solution to me. And I mean, we have some of the most advanced technology. These schools have access to all this stuff. I mean, it can happen.
I think the worry, though, is the studies they have about these heart issues potentially down the road if you do track this coronavirus. Look at what LSU coached, the national champions, defending national champions, even favorites to win another one this year. Head coach Ed Orgeron said that most of his team, so a majority of his team, has contracted this virus, and I think that's a huge issue. I mean, I think ASU looks at it as one player is too many. I think that's the way Herm Edwards and his staff looks at it. That every player's health is vital, and I think that's why they don't want to return to play just immediately, is because LSU is kind of like, oh, whatever, we'll get this virus and we'll get better.
So how do you think these wet letters from USC players weigh, and because obviously if USC wide receiver Mont Brown, he sent that letter to Gavin Newsom. I mean, obviously if they want to play football, they're not worried about this heart condition. So I mean, I don't know if there should be a waiver involved or something, but if that's something that is not on these kids' minds, if it's not something that's going to affect them to later down the line, and they're going to sign away responsibility for it or something, because at the end of the day, they can make a decision about themselves.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of questions, and I really do think we're going to get a lot of these answers within the next week by the time of our next Devil Dash of episode 6, because this vote does come down on Thursday. So whether it's a yes, whether it's a no, if it's a yes, they're going to have to give evidence of why this happened. What evidence do you have that's going to, believe us for a return to play? That's going to answer a lot of our questions, a lot of the operations of what's going to go down. And if it's no, it's going to answer a lot of our concerns of, how are you going to get over this obstacle? How are you going to get the testing in place for these players to start practicing right now? And I think that's a lot of questions that we're going to get in the next week. We're going to catch up on 2 questions. Could they allow a limited number of fans in the stadium via lottery? We can. We've seen it with the NFL. And, even in 6 weeks, we could have more progression than we have now. The Cardinals here in town have said that they're going to wait until the third home game of the season, which is around Halloween, which is a potential start date for ASU football as well. The Cardinals said that they're potentially allowing fans for the third home game. So something to keep track of. If the Cardinals allow fans, potentially ASU fans could be there, but there's no answers on that yet.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, you've seen the NFL do it. I don't think we're going to see virtual fans like you're seeing in the NBA. That's not going to happen. But I mean, look, the stadium's big enough where you can spread these people out, be smart about it, and so don't ruin it for everybody. And I mean, yeah, via lottery, we'll see how the alumni donors feel about that, not getting on the field. But
And we have another question. Who makes your all-time ASU football teams by position down for just skill players? So let's give them a running back, a quarterback, and a wide receiver. I can start for you. Quarterback's pretty easy. One of the best players in ASU history and best names nicknames in ASU history, Jake Plummer. Running back, it's so tough. I love DJ Foster, and another tandem with DJ Foster was Jalen Strong at wide receiver. I just grew up watching him. I saw so many great victories, like a Notre Dame game in person, and so I would say Jake Plummer, DJ Foster, and Jalen Strong. Give me three. You can tail on the same ones as well. I know I went first there.
For quarterback, I got to go Plummer. I don't know. I like probably just DJ Foster for right now for running back, and then I'm going to go, I don't know, I like Harry.
N'Keal Harry, it's a great choice. We have another question, whether players should unionize so they have an official voice in the decision. So we saw something like that. We talked about it on, I believe, episode 1 or 2. It was the Pac-12 Unity group of players that they kind of did an estimate of how much each player is worth per person to each organization. And in the Pac-12, it came out to close to $200,000, maybe a little over $200,000 per player. And something that was positive for ASU is that 0 players on ASU were involved in this Pac-12 Unity group. And we talked about that a lot, about what that means to ASU's coaching staff and how they care about their players. So there is kind of a union, and it didn't really gain a whole lot of traction. I think the bottom line is the players just want to play. But moving on from the Pac-12, we are going to talk about wide receiver U, Josh. Our friends over at Trojan Dash, we talked about how ASU's had the 2 first-round picks, 2 first-round picks in the last 2 years with N'Keal Harry and Brandon Ayuk, and how USC just really hasn't produced in the NFL. So we're going to do something, maybe a little weekly update, wide receiver U, ASU versus USC. So we wanted to pull up N'Keal Harry, who is probably the best ASU receiver in the NFL. He has his new quarterback, Cam Newton. He had probably one of the best weeks of his career with 72 yards. He actually got the Patriots, if you watched the game last night on Sunday Night Football, he got the reception to get the Patriots down on the 1-yard line before Cam Newton was ultimately stuffed. GOAT! He finished with 8 receptions for 72 yards, and then we looked at USC's best wide receiver. And I want to quote one of my friends, Reagan, over here from Trojan Dash. He said, quote, "If you want to come for the king, you better not miss." So, Reagan, I want to talk to you right back. If you want to be the self-proclaimed king, your best receiver in the NFL better not be putting up 48 yards. I know N'Keal Harry doesn't have the 1 year that Juju does. N'Keal Harry hasn't even played 10 games, I want to say probably a full season yet in the NFL. But, your players are constantly disappointing, Reagan. You got Michael Pittman, who is very highly touted, and I believe he finished with 4 receptions and 37 yards after a very disappointing week 1, too. And, I have a lot of pressure on Pittman because now that Paris Campbell's hurt for the Colts, I think Pittman needs to step it up because he's going to be that number 2 option for Phillip Rivers. But the other first-round pick for the Sun Devils was Brandon Ayuk. I don't have his stats up in front of me, but he did miss week 1 against the Cardinals with an injury, so he did make his debut. And he did pretty well. He had a big third down and 6 conversion. But back over to our friends.
I think he had 2 catches for 23 yards or something like that.
So not a very great day, but a solid debut. But so over to our friends. We want to talk about wide receiver U. We want to hear what your exact definition is. Is it what you do in college and nothing past that? Because we know you have a history of quarterbacks that love performing in college and not doing much in the NFL. So I get it if, quarterback you can have that. Carson Palmer was great for the Cardinals. We love you for that. But, quarterbacks don't produce from USC, and it's kind of looking like wide receivers, of this generation aren't producing. We've seen Nelson Aguilar had his big second catch of the year in week 2, so not producing anything. Marquise Lee, I don't have his stats. I don't even know what he's doing anymore. But wide receiver after wide receiver gets, all this high recognition from USC. Is it because of their tradition? Like, why? No, Juju had a great rookie year and hasn't produced outside of that. I know they had quarterback issues, but I really think if you're a wide receiver and it's starting to show in recruiting, they're coming to ASU now, not USC.
It has to be your soft tradition. Look at right now, ASU is wide receiver U in Pac-12.
We talked about this on earlier, and I don't want to make it sound like USC has bad receivers because they have many great wide receivers. But, ASU is just producing more, and USC isn't producing in the NFL. And we're going to keep an eye on this. I do want to point out Juju had a good week 1, but the Steelers didn't really miss a beat with him not producing in week 2. So we're going to keep an eye on this week to week. I would say if we're keeping a little tally, week 1 definitely went to the USC wide receivers, and week 2 to the ASU receivers. So I would say 1-1, and we'll keep track of it. Maybe by week 16 we'll have an update.
And I'll keep you guys updated on when Micah Pittman Jr. gets drafted. And I'm in 5 leagues, so he's on the waivers in all of them. So we'll keep you updated for that. But we got a question from Tyler.
If the starting offense were cast in the Marvel comic universe, who would be which superhero and why? I'll give you one superhero. So
let's go 1 or 2 superheroes.
We'll go one player on offense and 1 player on defense. We'll go Jaden Daniels. He's probably the easiest. He's kind of what about Ethan Long? So he's a freshman. He was kind of the backup or even third-string quarterback last year for ASU. He's a true freshman, but he got named captain of the team for his great leadership ability, and his nickname was Captain America. So I think that's a pretty easy Marvel character to give you right there. And then on defense...
Wait, I got this one. I got this. I'm going to go bold, okay? I'm going to go... Wait, I'm going to go... What's the line?
I'm going to go...
Merlin as...
Merlin Robertson.
Merlin Robertson is...
Hulk, I would say. The way he feels... I
was going to say... Thanos, bro.
Thanos. That's not a superhero. He's a super villain, man.
Whatever. He's in the universe.
Sorry, we're not great at comparing the ASU football characters or football players to Marvel characters. Our apology over here. But we have another question. Do you think ASU can win the Pac-12 with play start soon? A fantastic question.
Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely. We've talked about this a lot on our show. I mean, the big competition is going to be in the South is going to be Utah and USC. I think we're better than Utah. I think USC is a toss-up if we can win that game head-to-head. I think the records could be very similar at the end of the year. And then if you get to that Pac-12 championship game, you never know what could happen. I don't think we could beat Oregon this year, but I would have said that last year too. And ASU played a very solid game. It was at home with fans, but they outplayed an Oregon team. It wasn't really a game where they kind of just scrapped by and got a win late, but if you get to that championship game, why not? Your odds wouldn't be terrible of winning. So, what do you think?
I mean, for me, it all depends on Jaden Daniels' key performances, like you said, against
and his progression
USC.
from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah, and not even year 1 to year 2, but even just literally game 1 to game 2. Literally just continue progressively getting better throughout the season, and that kind of just goes as a team as a whole and an offense, but I mean they can make it happen, man. It's gonna take some hard work.
And then a follow-up question on that: Who do you think?
And social distancing.
Social distancing, mask up. Who do you think the top 3 teams in the Pac-12 are? I think it's pretty easily Oregon's number 1. They're going to be a college football playoff contender if the season does happen sooner rather than later. I think USC is probably number 2. And I think that third spot's up for discussion. I think ASU, Utah, and maybe Washington all kind of fit into that role of third best team. And I think the gap between Oregon and USC is way bigger than the gap between USC and that other group of 3 schools that I just named. Oregon's the class of the Pac-12 right now. They have been for the last few years. I know Washington made a college football playoff, but I mean Oregon's really the target on the back. You got to beat them to win the Pac-12.
Honestly, I think obviously Oregon's going to be the number 1 team in the Pac-12, but I go second USC. I think third. I think the Huskies could make a push for the third best team in the Pac-12. I mean, I think some people are forgetting about how stout their defense is. I mean, Jacob Eason, that
he's
dude
in the NFL now. Though.
I know. That dude gunning the ball around last year stole the show almost every game, but their defense really made some plays. Shout out to Bakersfield boy up there playing. What's his name? Cam something. Oh my gosh.
We are going to. We have a few minutes left in our show, so we're going to look around to wrap up the show. We're going to look up how the ASU players are doing in the NFL. We talked about N'Keal Harry. We talked about Brandon Ayuk, the receivers, and we looked at USC wide receivers. But we wanted to look at all the other players and some notable names. We have Benjamin, who was an ASU star last year. He's on the Cardinals on the 53-man roster as the third-string running back. We talked about Ayuk on the 49ers. We have DJ Foster, ASU legend, also on the Cardinals. We have Lawrence Guy, who's a Super Bowl winner for the Patriots. We have N'Keal Harry, who we talked about for the Patriots. Matt Hawk, who's actually, I believe, one of the most underrated Sun Devils in the NFL right now. He could be the best up there. He's very, very good punter. He averages, I don't know his averages in front of me, but the game yesterday, it seemed like every punt was going 50-plus yards. We have Zane Gonzalez, the kicker, he won Kicker of the Year award for college football when he was a senior here at ASU. We've got some other names like Rennell Wren, who was a third-rounder last year, Bryce Perkins, who transferred from ASU, but we'll count him. But of those names I mentioned, is there anyone I left out, or is there a name that stands out to you on that list?
You get DJ Foster in there?
Yeah, I talked about DJ Foster.
I mean, on one note, one player on this that's not on this list, one of the scummiest players in the history of the league, Vontaze Burfict.
So I actually have a really funny story that I've been a diehard ASU fan my entire life, and there's a story about Vontaze Burfict. So he was actually rated as the number one linebacker in the country from after his sophomore year going into his junior year, where he was projected to leave ASU early and be a first-round draft pick. And he was going to be an early draft pick, potentially top 10, and he was a big deal. Junior year, he came out of shape, had a lot of personal foul penalties, and just really didn't do anything for ASU. His stock plummeted, and then get this, he goes to the NFL draft combine as a linebacker and put up 0 reps on the bench press. 0. The same amount of championships that the Oregon football team has. 0. And he went on to be one of the leading tacklers in the NFL when he got signed. But it's something funny that the number one linebacker in the country projected in the NFL draft to 0 reps on the bench press. It's something funny. But another name I left off this list was Terrell Suggs. He's not currently signed in the NFL, but he's a Super Bowl champion now. He's one of the best players in Ravens defense history. He got cut by the Cardinals last year and got picked up by the Chiefs. And it was great to see an ASU legend, Arizona high school football legend, and someone played for the Cardinals. Everyone in Arizona loves this guy, Terrell Suggs, and it was really good to see him get a Super Bowl ring. But of the players named, I think Lawrence Guy is a guy that goes by. He's been on the Patriots for many years now, and he has two or three Super Bowl rings for them. And he really doesn't get a lot of talk because Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman. There's so many names on that team, but he's someone that really goes unnoticed by a lot of college football fans and kind of forget that he went to ASU and is a great player in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm still laughing at that what you said. Well, as soon as you said that about Oregon, dude, all I started thinking about was when Ayuk caught that catch.
Yeah,
you see, he held up he put it on the ground and kicked it in his hands.
And that is the signal, ASU rooting the Pac-12 chances of being in the college football playoff.
Yeah, I love it.
That's going to do it for us here at Devil Dash. Make sure to follow us on social media at Dash Sports TV on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. If it's social media, we're on there. Go follow us on there. And, we're doing columns now. I have a column, I believe, coming out tomorrow for sportspac12.com. Give them a follow on Twitter if you're not already at SportsPac12. Reach out to us on Twitter, comment on us, tweet us if you have any questions about Sun Devil football. I'm at Wills Rice 17 on Twitter, and I don't know what yours is.
At Josh_Eyraud.
So give us a follow.
Baby.
Give us a follow, tweet at us, and we'll get into your questions next week on the next episode of Devil Dash. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.